welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Today, I am joined by Executive Coach of Authentic Leadership International, Colleen Slaughter. Colleen shares her personal experience with burnout, the importance of self-awareness and setting boundaries, and what it truly means to be a leader. As always, you can join the conversation over at giveyourselfsomeleeway.com. You can message me on Instagram at eugene.leeway, or you can shoot me an email, eugene@leeway.ie. Thank you, and I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Colleen Slaughter. Colleen, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway, and thank you for taking the time to join the show.
Thanks a lot, Eugene. I'm happy to be with you again.
Colleen, for people who aren't familiar with Bolder Moves and the work that you do, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, your story, and who you serve, and why you do what you do?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And of course, as your podcast is all about burnout, I'll make sure the story more lends itself to that angle, just so the audience realizes that there might be more to my story, but I'll take that piece in particular. So Bolder Moves is all about inciting individuals, because even though I definitely specialize in leadership development and executive coaching and team development, my whole premise of leaders is that it's about anyone that has the mindset and the gumption to act on that. One of my favorite definitions is from a man named Rafael Echeverria, who says, leaders are people who declare possible what other people do not. I think we've all met leaders in high levels that didn't necessarily act like leaders. And by the same token, we've probably all met people that are not necessarily high up, are hierarchically up, but who definitely display leadership ability. So that's what I'm talking about. And so what we like to do at Bolder Moves is it's Authentic Leadership International with a website called boldermoves.com, which is perhaps a little bit deceiving. But the notion is that to be authentic today, especially in the world we live in, really does take a lot of courage. It can take a lot of inner work, depending on how we've been programmed, to be able to just really stand for what we believe in and what's true for us. And so at boldermoves.com or at Authentic Leadership International, it is about taking those steps a little bit at a time out of our comfort zone, which in itself asks for some courage. Just leaving our comfort zone sometimes can be a big deal. And so we really suggest not taking huge leaps, but little doses at a time, which is going to be completely subjective depending on who we are and what our story is. And getting into that, thanks for the question about my story. I came from a background which I know many people don't always bring up in the business world, but in my experience, most people can relate to quite dysfunctional, even traumatic background. And so at a relatively young age, I started working on myself. I started trying to understand, why do I have the reactions I have? Why do I have the triggers I have? I sought some help around that, ended up meeting a lot of awesome people on a similar path who also gave me their experience, strength, and hope. And what I started understanding in my career, one thing at a time led to the fact that I became exposed to coaching. And when I heard that, I knew in my body that this is something I wanted to do. It was a series of trial and error when I found it. I had already been in consulting. I had already worked in pharma. I'd already worked with lawyers. I had done a series of things. And I started realizing that there's actually a profession which coupled both what I loved doing, because I had been told that I had wisdom, that I was helping people. And this was not even in my career. This is in my personal life. So it was combining both what I loved to do, what felt natural to me, along with the path I had gone on. And because I had been through, and I have been through, a lot of the similar struggles, inner struggles and outer struggles, to really make our mark in the world, I felt like I have felt like I have a really strong stake in the ground in helping people with this. The particular twist in burnout for me and my story with it is as a compulsive doer. In fact, sometimes we can tease being a human doing instead of a human being. oldest child of a dysfunctional family. So anyone that knows anything about that knows that means alpha woman, right? Overdoing. I found myself trying to get good enough constantly. Now, on the one hand, it worked really well for me. I have degrees from really good schools. I live in France, having grown up in Kentucky. I have a business with literally clients from all over the world. I mean, by most people's standards, wow, that has served me. But where it hasn't served me is in the being really hard on myself. And that sense within that, oh, I'm just not good enough. I have to keep accomplishing or doing, or just one more there or one more there. And until finally, I've had several episodes of two ways burnout has showed up for me. One is extreme exhaustion, which ends up working against me because then I can't really be present for anyone, much less my clients. And of course, not my two beautiful girls either, which is important to me. But also in depression. I've had multiple depressions in my life. And yes, I will name that here. I think that, in my experience, is more prevalent than we tend to talk about. And in my experience, there's roots of it which do have to be with burnout. But burnout has a root, in my view, of a couple things. One is imposter syndrome. And along with imposter syndrome is trying to belong. So again, in my experience for myself and different people I've worked with, the burnout has to do with the sense of already feeling like we don't belong. So the more we can attend to those self-beliefs and be there for ourselves and set boundaries, which a lot of people are afraid to do because we're afraid to create conflict, the more that burnout can dissipate. And maybe I jumped ahead to another question you're going to ask me. Sorry, I was more going down the path of the story and then what I love to help people do. So it's not just necessarily staying on the behavior, the surface behaviors, let's say, of how to get out of burnout, but really diving under the waterline and understanding what's the mentality also that goes with that could lead to overwhelm, let's say, and burnout.
Awesome. Yeah, you covered a lot there,
I
especially
did.
in terms of your
I was
burn.
on a tangent, wasn't I?
Well, especially in terms of your burnout, you really hit the nail on the head there. You had the imposter syndrome, you had that looking for a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And usually what people do is they try to immerse themselves, as you said, being the alpha female there as well, and immersing yourself in your work. And I think that's something a lot, especially people with a high achieving mindset, whether that be from their childhood experiences. I think that's where it always starts. There's always kind of a sense of
That's our
trying to
programming.
find that self validation in your in your accomplishments, and that's what drives you. And from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, that person is really successful. Look what they've done with their lives. But no matter how many achievements you make, it's never good enough. And that's when you start burning yourself out. It's like, oh, like for me personally, I was working 48 to 60-hour weeks. Then I took on one degree outside of work. I was doing college part-time. Then the following year I took on a second one. So I was doing 2 degrees simultaneously while working full-time. And even that wasn't enough. I was taking on extra activities as well and taking on extra responsibilities. And people were telling me I was crazy. And I'd be like, oh, it's just what I do. Just what I do. I'm always working. And I put that work and all those extra accomplishments and taking on basically juggling so many activities all at once as part of my identity. And of course, that was a roller coaster. It looks great from the outside looking in. It's like, oh, Eugene keeps himself very busy all the time. But if I had just narrowed my focus and focused on one thing and saved more time for myself in that time space, and been like, okay, I'm interested in doing this in the future. I'll wait until the future when it will have 100% my focus so that I can focus on me for now. Then I probably wouldn't have burnt out.
So would it be all right with you if I push back a little bit on some of the things, at least in my experience?
Yeah, of course. This
For
is a
the sake of
discussion.
conversation and sake of experience.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. For me, it hasn't just been a deep dive into my work and focus on my work. It's this idea of perfectionism, which I put it in quotes because I know it doesn't really exist. Not really. Like the world according to Colleen, I haven't yet been able to create that, right? But the fact is, I do it with mothering. I do it as a friend. I do it as, wanting the great body, wanting the great apartment, right? I can do it all the way around. It's this whole idea about, again, getting good enough. And the other thing I would say, I think there can be accomplishments, a list of accomplishments that can be enough when we're feeding ourselves from within, right? When we're nourishing that good enoughness from within. And then we can, because one of my mentor coaches said, Colleen, do you know the number one, and I'll ask you this, Eugene, just in case, do you know the number one reason for dissatisfaction among humans? And I don't know what, by the way, what the statistical institution is backing this up, but this is my mentor coach telling me. I still think it's interesting information. It's not giving ourselves credit. It's not celebrating what we've done, right? So when we can, it doesn't mean it has to cost money. We don't have to go out and have a champagne dinner, right? If we can just do a happy dance or have a scoop of ice cream or whatever it is, right? That might sound really goofy, but something to just say, wow, I did that. And that was hard, and I'm so happy with myself. Just being able to take a few breaths and take that in can go a long way toward nourishing ourselves. Because I would say every single human I work with, including yours truly, the main factor is when we try to the main factor getting us into trouble. It starts a chain reaction from our mindset up into our behaviors and our results, is trying to get our needs met outside us. So when I don't feel lovable, and I want you to validate that I'm lovable, and yes, I use that word in a business context because we're humans and we bring ourselves everywhere we go. And this shows up all the time. I mean, I'm a recovering people pleaser. Did that most of my life up until about 4 years ago when I had a huge turning from that. But the people pleasing is what kept me in a lot of burnout, actually. Because to your point, we can never really get there. We can never get good enough when we're trying to fill up from outside us. But when we learn to give ourselves the validation or the love, the ballgame changes. That's when we feel comfortable setting more boundaries or with ourselves even, right? And so I could keep talking, obviously, but I will also pass the ball to you. So I'm not just totally.
Yeah, no, of course. Especially what you covered there about the people pleasing as well. And I think there's definitely aspects of that where sometimes there'll be a project and I knew that I'd take it on. As again, not saying no, learning to say no, and sometimes not saying no because I'd be confident that I'd be able to take on that project. I mean, like, yeah, I could definitely do a great job in that project. Of course, I'll do it, and you're going to love me for the results that I'm going to get you
Oh,
because
for sure.
I'm so hot at this project. And at the same time, I'd have to take a step back and be like, am I the right person for this job, or is it because I don't want anyone else being in control? And is me just taking ownership of this project because I am confident in my ability, or is it me trying to be a control freak and be like, I know I could do a great job at this, but I'm not sure if anyone else can do such a great job at this, so I'm going to take full responsibility myself.
Yeah, it could be that, or wanting the spotlight for oneself.
It
And
all comes down to self-validation at the end of the day.
it does. And I'm not sure if you've heard of the iceberg model. For some people that's there. I don't know if that resonates with you, Eugene, if you've heard that. But under the basically humans being compared to the iceberg model, not because we're cold, hopefully not, but because as with icebergs, where geologists tell us there's 10% sticking out above the waterline, but 90% obviously is the part driving this iceberg around the colder waters. So it is with we humans that there's 10% that everybody sees our behavior, but the other 90% nobody sees is our mindset. But yet that mindset is what's driving us. And a big part of that is values. So as you were speaking, I was thinking, wow, yeah, what about, to your earlier point, when I'm looking to get other people to give me the thumbs up, or I want to be in the spotlight, and look what a great job she's doing, isn't she a team player, and all that stuff, I'm going to be so much less discerning about what I say no to. But when I use my values, for example, to filter, well, is that in alignment with who I am really? Or is it in alignment with my vision, what I'm trying to accomplish? And then it becomes less about me and my worth and more about what's the difference I want to make in this company, or what's the difference I want to make in the world. And that becomes it becomes less hard to say no and let someone else, quote, have the spotlight. So I don't know how that resonates with you, but I definitely find values and purpose and vision and all of that a great way to sift through what's important and what isn't for us.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, it's finding those values, find that purpose, setting boundaries as well, both for yourself and for others. Where do you find trying to strike that balance? What do you think needs to be put in place to strike that balance?
Well, the first thing is self-awareness above all. And that sounds like a no-brainer, perhaps. It's one of those things that might be simple but not easy, because self-awareness can be simple or easy when we like what we see. But when we start getting to the stuff that feels less comfortable, it's obviously not so easy. So the first thing is self-awareness and understanding what makes me tick. The things that trigger me, like Carl Jung says, what triggers us is actually a gift to us because it allows us to see where we have friction, right? Where we have blocks inside us. And the key to freedom is working through those blocks. And that's part of self-awareness. Now, how does that answer your question? Because the more we become aware of who we are really, not because we're trying to avoid the triggers, not because we're trying to avoid feeling not good enough or avoid feeling unlovable, but truly what's important to us. So it can be, again, depending on how we were raised, the messages we received, also our personality and our different national cultures, not only family culture, but national culture. Depending on all of that, it can be more arduous for some than others. In my case, it was a pretty long journey. Some people, though, I've worked with people whose parent is a psychologist. They've been raised with this mentality, so it's a piece of cake for them. But overall, it's definitely about the awareness. And we say in leadership, and again, going back to the definition, anyone is a leader. It's not, or can be. It really depends on how in alignment are we with our own icebergs, if you will. And depending on what's important to us, right, we'll be able to show up and be able to set those boundaries. But in some cases, if we're afraid of conflict, for example, that's the number one thing that prevents people from setting boundaries. When they feel that they're creating disharmony by actually being honest and speaking up about their needs. Of course, when we have a conversation around it, then they back up and they're able to see, oh, wait a minute. It's not really harmonious if I'm not being honest, if I'm not speaking about what I need. So there's a whole lot of layers to it, but the main thing is the willingness to stick through the journey. And I know what I was going to say earlier because I'd lost my thought. Leadership, it's this huge topic, but it really can be boiled down into 3 steps. That awareness we talked about, then a choice to do something about it. So awareness could be, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I'm working my gazumba off, right? And the choice could be, well, I need a nap. Yeah, okay. That's a short-term Band-Aid. It's a good choice, but it's short-term. What's our long-term solution? Oh, I need to learn to say no more often, right? So, okay, it's a choice. And then we need to make a commitment to do it because we humans are complicated creatures. And I do know about a lot of other humans I work with. I don't know about everyone, but I know about myself and those I work with. It takes practice, and it's neuroscience as well. It takes practice to enlarge our comfort zones where this new behavior can become more habit-like. when we're just a one-off. I think it was Bruce Lee who said, it's not in the moment of stress that we arise to the occasion. It's because we've been practicing all along that the muscle is built. So it really is about that commitment. So awareness of ourselves, like we said, making a choice. Okay, here's what I see. Not worth it to me. I'm not going to work on it. Okay, that's still a choice. Or, hey, that's the person I want to be over here. So I am going to commit to do the practice, set more boundaries, make more space for myself so I can experience this life differently and not be burnt out. But I'm going to have to practice doing that because it scares me to say no to people. That's honest. And that's actually, I work with leaders of all different levels of the organization, very senior, and also, as you know, in a consulting firm I work with, it doesn't matter. Every human I work with practically struggles with the same thing.
Yeah, that actually aligns very well with my foundation is self-awareness first, then
Yep.
self-compassion, and then
Ooh.
self-care.
Oh, I love it.
Because without having the three of them, you won't have consistency.
I love
Whether it's that setting of boundaries, whether that's learning a new habit, whether that's even something as simple as uh, putting a system in place
it. Yeah.
for growth or for recovery. If you want to recover from burnout, if you want to prevent relapse and set that boundary, you have to be aware first. Be aware of yourself. A lot of people are so uncomfortable becoming aware of themselves, of their physical, mental, and emotional well-being, that they always look for escapism.
Yeah.
But once you become aware, I was like, okay, this is a problem. This is something I need to address. Instead of putting yourself down, being like, God damn it, Eugene, this is the last time you're falling asleep at your desk. It's like, you need to be better. It's like, no, it's like your body is obviously tired. You can't perform at your best right now. Okay, maybe napping at your desk in the office isn't the best idea right now. Let's get up and get some fresh air. And it's like, but this can't happen on a regular basis. It's like, you shouldn't be this tired. Okay, let's set some boundaries. And then you put a self-care routine in where, okay, I'm going to get more fresh air. I'm going to maybe have a glass of water to clear my brain, to rehydrate. I'm going to start taking care of my body so that I can show up at my full potential and work to my full potential if that's why I'm feeling so tired right now. And it's trying to get that awareness instead of beating yourself up about it and being like, God damn it, you're weak. You should be better at your job here. It's like, no, you need to become more aware. What are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
Why are you feeling this way? Okay, don't beat yourself up about it. Treat yourself as your best friend. What would you tell your best friend to do? You're not going to beat them up on the spot. You're going to say, hey, take a break, get some fresh air, go grab a glass of water, change things up a bit, go talk to someone at the water cooler. Just break out of that mindset and just take care of yourself. Okay, we're going to have to put a routine in place here so that you don't start slumping at this time of the day. And again, just having the three foundations: self-awareness, self-compassion, self-care, and that sets you up
Love
for
it.
success.
I love it. Yeah, I was speaking with a coachee earlier today. First time we were working together, and he said to me, "Isn't it selfish to look to fill our own needs first?" And it reminded me, I grew up in a particular church, and the message I received was it was selfish to not to put ourselves first. And I relayed that to him and said, "Look, what I've learned is, speaking metaphorically, if I'm trying to give to anyone from an empty bucket, what ends up happening is I get resentful. I'm because I'm giving from emptiness. But when my bucket is full, i.e., I've done things that really nourish me physically, emotionally, spiritually, etc., I'm giving with no strings attached. I'm giving for fun and for free." And I use the example of my children that since they've pretty much been born, they've heard mommy say, "I want to be a great mom. That is so important to me. And for that, I need to go over and do my yoga flow, and then I'll be back." And they're used to it by now. And they know that I'm a different person when I take care of myself. And that's the deal here. That's what we're talking about, really. That's what I hear you say, Eugene, because I know that that's how we can be there for other people when we're first there for ourselves, right? That's a key part. And the other thing that you hit on, I love that word compassion. It's one of the things I think is really missing in the world to a large degree. And it definitely starts with us and the way we talk to ourselves. And sometimes what I find really helpful is say, it's normal that that's what you're doing, Colleen. That's what you learned, how to get your validation early on. It worked then. It just doesn't work anymore. Like just really understanding how I got here. It's not because I'm a bad person. It's not because I'm selfish. It's not because I'm always like, hey, everybody, look at me. It's because my needs weren't met. And this, for a time, worked for me, right? Maybe not in the healthiest way, but it worked for a time. And now it doesn't anymore. I think that is also, I love that you brought that in, because that's been the absolute game changer for me in my own development, is the whole way I talk to myself.
I actually have another guest coming on called Dr. Terry Zachary, and he took self-compassion to another level. And he refers to it as self-awe. He was like, how about we take a step back and just look at ourselves in awe for who we are? And I was like, I love this concept. It's like it's one thing we always beat up ourselves about not ever being good enough, and we need to strive for more growth, strive for more success. It was like, take a step back and just realize you are brimming with boundless potential. But you need to take a step back and serve yourself so that you can take care of that body, so that it's the same as any machine or any computer. If you don't do your computer update your software, your antivirus, your computer isn't going to work very well. It's going to freeze. You're going to have 99 tabs open all the time. It's not going to do a great job. If you have any machinery, if it's not a well-oiled machine, it's going to break. So if you don't take care of your body the same way, how can you expect to always strive for and your spirit? Exactly. How can you always serve at your full potential if you're not taking care of yourself first?
Yeah. And here's the thing too, that I learned the hard way. These uncomfortable feelings, that's the other thing, and that I've noticed with myself and others, a big part of the overdoing is trying to escape feeling uncomfortable feelings. It can be. I won't say systematically for every person, but that can be part of the story. And I had to learn the hard way. Those feelings don't go away because I don't want to feel them. They stay lodged in my body in places I don't necessarily want them, right? And so then at one point or another, to really be free and really take care of our bodies and our spirits and the people around us, really, because the more we feel good, it starts this virtuous circle. I gave the example of my children earlier. Until we feel the feelings, that's how we get free. That's how we get free of them. And that's where the compassion comes in again, because for some of us, it can be really scary to feel it. But it's my bias that that's also what keeps us from seeing our all. And I love that. I love that you brought that in and that he brings that in, because it's true. I have a mentor, a teacher, who talks about being irreplaceable, that every single one of us is irreplaceable. It's not possible. And really being able to truly, what I heard you say when we take a step back, is to truly be able to see that in ourselves. There were a couple of women leaders, more than a couple, but two in particular, that actually wrote testimonials about this. That's why they come to mind. They thought that they perhaps had landed on the wrong coach when they heard me say that, when they heard me say, really coming to terms with your own magnificence. They thought, oh gosh, this girl is cheesy, right? But they hung in there. And then they started realizing, you know what? It's true. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't see our light. We don't see our own radiance. And this is exactly also just circling back in that whole giving ourselves credit. And it's not instead of someone else. It's like we all have our own light. We all, if life are a prism, right? And showing up in this world, we're a prism, we all come at it from all the different angles. All of it is valid. But we also need to your point, see everything we bring for that light to fully be there in the prism. Anyway, I went off on a tangent around prism and light, but that's what came to mind as you were bringing that in around self-compassion.
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of people tend to, when we talk about self-compassion and self-awe, they always think, oh, you're being vain. You're talking about yourself the whole time. And it's like, no, it's like, if you don't take care of yourself first, you can't serve others. That's not, that's not being selfish for the wrong reasons. That's being selfish so that you can
Yeah,
serve others. It's
exactly.
the most selfless way of being selfish.
Yeah,
If you can't treat yourself with compassion, you can't treat anyone else with compassion. If you don't respect yourself first, how can you respect anyone
that's
else?
right. It starts with self. My relationship with myself, and that's what I was getting at with the people pleasing earlier. Like, it took me a long time to realize that the most important relationship is with myself with a capital S. What's the difference between capital S and small s? Small s would really be the me, and the capital S is more, to your point, because I have a strong intention to be of service to the world, to really help the world move forward. I have exactly what you're saying. I have to take care of myself because nobody else is going to do it. By the way, most of us are grown-ups, unless we're children, and of course, then parents. Yes, we definitely need to take care of them. But for the grown-ups, we're all responsible for ourselves. So if I'm not taking care of myself, who exactly is going to do that? Right. And that just sets us up, by the way, for expectations and resentments and all this other stuff. So we're just adding fuel to the fire when we don't step up. There's this group I'm part of, and we say two things around this. We say, no one can love me the way I want to be loved but me. In other words, I know the things that feel nourishing to me. And I often say to my clients, look, I know what works for me, but it doesn't mean it would work for you. I've got my list of things that I know that when I do regularly, I'm going to feel lit up. I'm going to feel fed. But everybody needs to build that for themselves, right? And then the second thing, so nobody can love me the way I want to be loved but me. And the second is we teach people how to treat us. But how can we teach people how to treat us if we don't know? We don't know how we want to be treated. It's just common sense. It sounds so. It really can take it out of the the selfishness piece out of the equation. When there's also the fact around love being exponential. The more we give it, the more there is. Right. The more we experience it for ourselves, the more there is. So the more that I feel it, I help myself to feel it. The more I have to give it. Right. There's that energetic notion with it as well.
Just going to take a minute of your time, going to be short and snappy. If you're a long time listener, or maybe this is your first episode, I have a small favor to ask. And the only way that we're going to break the stigma around mental health in the workplace is by having these open conversations, talking about these topics. And what better way than to have those discussions with your loved ones, with your family, your friends, your co-workers. So if you could follow, or subscribe on whatever platform or app you're listening to this, and share this episode with a loved one or someone that you think could gain value from hearing this, it would mean so much. Thank you. Let's get back to the episode.
Free us. What helps us overcome, break through our triggers, overcome our self-doubt, show our self-love so we can be there for others. And usually the way we change, or I prefer the word transform, because if you think about the butterfly, right? A caterpillar that goes to butterfly, it can never go back to being a caterpillar. It might think about it, but it's going to be too weird because it has wings, it's flying. And so it is with transformation. And the way to get there is through little itty bitty practices, which allow our comfort zone to expand manageably, not in a way that stresses us out. Because if we try to jump from comfort way into the terror zone, which is on the other side of the learning zone, we likely are going to be overwhelmed. There's the burnout again, right? And that's usually around trying to do too much in too short a time frame. So either we need to pull back on what we're asking of ourselves, or we need to enlarge in the time we get it done. But Boulder Move is all about that. It's all about especially the mindset to evolve. And what do we mean evolve? Well, being a better leader is really about being a better human. So again, the point you brought in, having more compassion, being more of service to others. How do we do that? What are the things that hold me back from doing that? Working on being the way we are is actually much more powerful than starting with the doing. So we usually say when we're developing leaders, first it's about the being, then the doing, then the knowing. But the being part can be the most challenging because, again, we go back to sitting with ourselves, the awareness with ourselves, and choosing to shift that, which, again, is not something we just snap our finger and all of a sudden we're different. Even when we have the courage in the moment to set a boundary, which is awesome, but it doesn't mean it's the panacea for everything in our lives, right? And the way we treat ourselves. That usually takes a lot of practice to shift. So voila, there's a lot more we can say about Boulder Moves, but obviously all of your listeners can also get the Boulder Move of the week, which we will tell them how to do that. But the main thing is staying the course, even when it gets boring or difficult.
Brilliant. And just for clarity, because this is something that comes up a lot, especially in the workplace, the difference between a leader and a manager.
Oh God, I
because
love
that
this.
it gets muddled so much,
Yeah,
and the
for
people ask
sure.
about different management styles versus leadership
Yeah,
styles.
yeah,
So what's the difference between being a leader versus being a manager?
yeah. And so this is a Colleenism, right? I'm not the end all be all on all of it.
This isn't the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of a
No,
leader versus manager.
This is a Colleenism, but again, it doesn't mean I purport to be the right on everything, but really manager can very much be linked to box ticking, right? And more around control and more around, okay, we got it done. And we had our team meeting, check, and so-and-so's doing that, and so-and-so's doing this. It's more around fulfilling duties. Leadership is more around a mindset. It's about, so in management, typically we get people to do things. You hear that a lot, right? We get them to do something. In leadership, we inspire people to do things. And please don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean it's like, just doing nothing but being. No, definitely have the credibility, definitely have the education, the technical know-how. Whoops. But we also know how to be approachable, how to come from a higher level of thinking that other people might also want to strive for, how to set a vision and empower. And that's what I heard you say earlier around, you didn't use the word, but you were talking about empower people making a choice to go to bed earlier, go outside, go meet somebody at the water cooler, right? We have the power. We have the power to choose the life we want. We really do. Can we do it all within a week? Probably not. And depending on what our goal is, it might take longer than others, but we have the power. And that's what a leader truly helps instill in his or her people. So that for me is the difference. It's all around mindset, how they see themselves. And I'm actually writing a book, so stay tuned. But I love a lot of what Gandhi talked about with leadership. He talked about standing in the back, right, of the people. And it's not because we're last, but it's not exactly what we've been talking about. Leadership is not a me, everybody look, right? Leadership is more, hey, look at this cool thing we're doing to move the world forward, right? So it's more about the service we're giving, much more than about the individual. So I hope that helps delineate some of it. But yeah, it's actually funny because I do have people that will come and talk about being a better manager. And I say, I hope not. I hope you want to be a better leader. Teasing.
It's funny because it actually came up quite recently. I was changing careers, and one question posed to me by an interviewer was, because it was a leadership role, he asked me what were the key traits of a leader that I would use to manage my team. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I came from it from a point of what were the key traits that I would look for in a leader and that I would use myself as a leader. And I said communication, empathy, and adaptability. would be my top traits that I look for in a leader.
Great.
And they seemed to be looking for traits like, oh, we were looking for time management, decision making. And I was like, no, that's their management skills, they're good management skills, but not what I'd be looking for in a leader. Yes, if
Absolutely.
I want someone to manage my day, great.
Yep.
But if I want someone to inspire me, I need someone with
Mhm.
a vision. I need someone who wants me to work towards my goals to help empower me. I'm not going to be looking for someone with great time management skills.
You got it, Eugene. That's the difference.
What was the bold move of the week?
Mhm, mhm. Well, as I mentioned, it's for free. It's actually didn't say that earlier, but I will say it's for free. I can't stand when I get harassed by email, so I promise never to do that. But what it means is if you choose to sign up, you will get every Tuesday in your inbox the boulder move of the week, and it's usually 2 or 3 lines. Something like I was just reading one because I'm actually, like I mentioned, putting a book together with my boulder moves, and an example would be play, right? And remember to play. And then a couple of lines of explaining how that's relevant in the workplace, how that helps your leadership. And then, as we've been saying with awareness, choice, commitment to practice, you might choose that that's not relevant. That's cool. No worries. You'll get another one the next week and you can play with that. So the best way to get it is just to go to bouldermoves.com, and no, it's not the city in Colorado. A lot of people think it is. I don't know why, but it is BOLDERMOVES. You will see in the first fold, yes, I want transformation. You click on it. You'll see then on the right, you just can put your first name in, your email, and you're good to go. And delighted to serve you in that way, and hoping that that will help you and give you some great ideas about some shifts that might be possible for you.
Brilliant. And do you want to plug that book for anyone that might be interested, or is it still
No, I'd love to. It's actually, I didn't do it on purpose. But I love the story of the caterpillar to the butterfly, and it is called The Caterpillar's Journey to Bolder Leadership. And if you would like to be one of the first to get it, I am in the final stages. It will be published within the next quarter. I do have a page on my website on the What We Do section, and then it says Colleen's book. And then you can just ask to be one of the first alerted. You just can put your email in, and I'd be very happy to keep you informed. Thank you for that, Eugene. That wasn't planned to talk about that, but
I was like, you mentioned it too many times. You can't let it
I'm
go
sorry.
unsaid.
I actually am not very salesy, so it truly wasn't there. It just felt relevant to say, so apologies.
Yeah, of course. When it happens naturally,
Yeah, I
might as well let
not
everyone
my
know
thing to be
how to get
salesy.
their hands on that book when
Yeah,
it comes out.
exactly. And if it could be helpful, that's the main thing.
Of
Truly.
course, of course. So if anyone does want to get in contact with you, other
Mhm.
than Boulder Moves, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, best way, either LinkedIn, I'm there, Colleen Slaughter, and or you can send me an email, colleen@bouldermoves.com. Those who are not Irish often kind of get confused how to spell Colleen. So Coll, 2 L's and 2 E, although sometimes in Irish it is also 1 L. My name is 2 L's, 2 E's, and N. So Colleen at bouldermoves.com. Yep.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thanks again so much for joining the show,
Welcome. I
Colleen. It was
had
great
fun
having
with
you.
you. Thank you. I had a great time, and I hope this serves your listeners for sure.